Well, welcome or welcome back to Voice Advisor. Now, these are video series that try to emphasize or illustrate evidence-based practices that help students practice and generalize a learned social skill into the classroom environment, the real setting. And as an illustration here, and emphasize the word real, remember Voice, the app, is a virtual reality app that teaches understanding and basically the overview of the skill that hopefully our students are learning, and now, well, how do they generalize it? And that's what we're going to focus on today. And today we're going to focus in on something called contrived mediated stimulus. And I'm going to refer to it forward as CMS. And CMS, in a way, is a very broad practice. It does have evidence behind it, but it, in a way, combines a number of elements that you'll see in our Voice Advisor series, other evidence-based practices. Its focus, though, is very much on this generalization. So this is one of the reasons we're focused on CMS, is we're really trying to generalize across settings. And in so doing, there are some steps to consider and also some practices to consider. So with that in mind, the first focus is the fact that with the settings, we need to think about not only the skill that's taught, but then the demands of the setting and demands of the contextualization of the social situation. And that's where CMS comes in well to be able to kind of combine the two to facilitate that understanding by the student and the generalization. So with that, it is a way kind of we program the student in a way, think of it, we program in terms of coding, but we are very explicit, very specific in how we program things for the student to have them understand in order to then maximize that level and ability to generalize when the social situation is tweaked and the demands are a bit different based on the context of the setting they're in. Hallway, classroom, cafeteria, the list goes on. And now we appreciate the fact that with CMS, that generalization is tough for a lot of students, let alone students with disabilities, let alone students with disabilities that are trying to understand a new social skill and then the demands that each setting places on it. You know, a hallway is different from a cafeteria, different from a classroom, and of course one classroom is different from another based on grade, content, things of that nature. So, first thing to think about with CMS is CMS combines a number of different approaches. So for example, break cards. Break cards in and of themselves, they're awesome. They offer visualization. They offer a kind of a breakdown of what we're trying to have the student apply and practice. So we use that within the context of the social situation as well as the setting. We can also use token economies. They're phenomenal for proactive ways to reward individuals, to reinforce the appropriate behavior, reinforce how they're supposed to do it. And of course, as we're trying to introduce it across settings, it's a great tool to continue to use to facilitate that level of generalization. Now, visual prompts, we've already mentioned visual prompts as part of a Voice Advisor series as an evidence-based practice. So visual prompts in and of themselves are great, but they can be used within the context of CMS to further facilitate that generalization across multiple settings. In addition, specific phrases like social narratives, another evidence-based practice, uses very descriptive, very affirmative, very explicit statements. And of course, we want to make sure with CMS we're doing the same thing so the individual understands exactly what's expected within that new instructional setting for that social situation and that social skill. And then finally, in terms of some of these general practices, behavioral checklists or charts. Again, visualization allows things to be broken down, rewards, reinforces, and allows for what we're expecting of that social skill within the demands of that new situation. Now, in implementing CMS with a variety of these different practices, there's 6 general approaches. So number 1 in these 6 general approaches is the fact that, well, we identify the social skill deficit. But here, we identify the social skill deficit and what's desired, and we do it within the setting and the context of what's necessary to implement. So it's a little bit different from some of our other practices because there's a number of things going on here when we identify it. And part of that, number 2, is we observe and we identify in other situations that same practice. So there's going to be subtle differences. There's going to be demands on the instructional setting that may tweak things. And so we consider that as we look to implement it. And in so doing, we identify visual information, verbal information, context that might be consistent across settings, that might be a bit unique across settings, and we help support the child, the student, in facilitating that. Number 4, of course, we teach the desired skill. And in so doing, we do it with the thought of the demands of the setting and, of course, the application into those settings. Again, our primary focus here is on that generalization. Number 5, when we transfer the learner across settings, we're thinking of a level of proficiency. But with that proficiency, we want to focus in on the ability to transfer, and in so doing, we want to prompt, when necessary, that desired social skill, but within the demands, within the situation, and all that goes along with it, within those various instructional settings. So in a way, yes, very generic, and yet very specific for our implementation efforts. And number 6, we want to provide positive feedback. We can do that in a variety of different ways, but that's necessary, particularly as they incrementally introduce this new social skill ability into the various demands of the instructional setting. So there's going to be a number of situations where we want to offer positive feedback to reinforce what the child's doing well and to reinforce that understanding that, yes, this is appropriate within the context of this instructional setting. So very broad 6 steps for implementation, very broad approach, but of course we have a video illustration of what this looks like in the classroom on Voice Advisor. We also have some web resources that further facilitate an understanding of CMS and how it looks to further practice and generalize a learned social skill. And remember, this is all within Voice Advisor, which is focused in on facilitating the practice and generalization of learned social skills, particularly ones learned in the Voice app, for the application in the real classroom environment. So come on back, listen to more. Hopefully this one was helpful, and have a great day.